Welcome to our study group for PP 5340, Introduction to Public Policy and Management. Today we are digging into Chapter 5 from the textbook, Race and Social Equity, a nervous area of government. And let me tell you, this chapter is a case study about a city that decided to dive headfirst into that very nervous area. We're talking about a radical plan to tackle systemic inequality, not with little tweaks, but with a massive overhaul that started right at the top.
So, let's start with the quote that kicks this whole thing off. This comes from Seattle's mayor at the time, Greg Nickels, and you can just feel the tension in that statement, right? This wasn't some easy decision. People were actively warning him, don't do this, you're just going to make people mad. But he felt he had to. So the question is, why? What was happening that made him take such a huge political risk?
Well, to get that, you have to look past Seattle's progressive image and see what was really going on. The reality on the ground was, frankly, pretty shocking, and the data tells the story.
I mean, just take a second and let these numbers sink in. These aren't opinions. These are cold, hard facts. Unemployment for black men was literally at Great Depression levels. If you were a Native American, Latino, or black student, it was a coin toss whether you'd even graduate high school. And that last one, that one's a gut punch. A white person with a criminal record had a better chance of getting a job than a black person with a totally clean record. That was the reality the mayor was looking at.
Now, a big, bold initiative like this doesn't just appear out of thin air. It was actually built on years of work by previous administrations. And believe it or not, a huge political setback is what ironically ended up lighting the fuse for this whole thing.
So let's trace the history a little bit. In the 90s, you have Mayor Norm Rice, the city's first black mayor, already pushing on equity issues. Then Mayor Schell starts these public conversations called City Talks. Things are moving along, but then, bam. In 1998, Initiative 200 passes, and it bans affirmative action across the state. You'd think that's game over, right? A huge step backward. But here's the crazy twist. Taking away that old tool forced the city to get creative and invent a brand new one, which led directly to the RSJI.
So, what was this new approach? What made the Race and Social Justice Initiative, or the RSJI, so different from what came before? Well, it started with something really simple, but really radical. They decided to actually call the problem by its name.
And this right here, this is the absolute core of the whole thing. The target wasn't individual people being racist. It was institutional racism. And pay close attention to those last two words, unintentionally or inadvertently. This is so important. They weren't on a witch hunt for bad guys. They were looking at the system itself, the rules, the policies, the budgets, and asking a simple question. Who does this help and who does this hurt?
So this was their game plan. First, no more vague language. We're going to talk openly and explicitly about race. Second, we're going to look in the mirror first. The city's motto was literally, get our own house in order. And critically, this wasn't about patting themselves on the back. It was about hard data, measurable results, and being directly accountable to the communities that were being left behind.
Okay, so you've got this bold plan on paper. It looks great. But now you have to actually do it inside a giant city government. And let me tell you, the pushback was immediate.
And you know what the very first fight was about? It wasn't about money or policy. It was about two words, institutional racism. Just saying them out loud caused a firestorm.
I mean, get this. The city's own lawyers were telling them, whoa, stop, you can't say that. If you admit the problem exists, you're opening us up to lawsuits. And this created this fundamental conflict, right? Do you manage your legal risk, or do you actually try to solve the problem you know is there? You can't fix what you aren't willing to name. But Mayor Nickels and his team, they pushed right through it. The next move was a huge one, mandatory race and social justice training. And not just for a few managers, for every single one of the city's 8,000+ employees. And as you can probably guess, the reactions were intense.
This quote from one of the people leading the trainings just nails it. You had people shutting down, you had people getting visibly angry, asking, why are we even doing this? This is pointless. A lot of people just did not want to be there.
And this next quote really gets to the heart of why it was so tough. You have a senior level administrator admitting, yeah, talking about white privilege was really uncomfortable. It's that difficult personal moment of having to grapple with the idea that maybe you've benefited from a system that is fundamentally unfair to others. That is not an easy thing to face.
But here's the key. The people leading this initiative, they knew this was coming. They expected the discomfort, the arguments, the conflict. They saw cracking open a few eggs, as this manager puts it, not as a sign of failure, but as a necessary part of the process. You couldn't get to the good stuff without going through the fire first. So, okay,
They went through the fire, they had the hard conversations, they faced all that resistance. But did it actually do anything? What were the results after all that pain and effort?
Well, let's start with a big, flashy number. A 209% increase. That's how much the city's spending with women and minority-owned businesses went up. It jumped from $11 million to $34 million. That is a massive, tangible shift in who is getting economic opportunities in Seattle.
And the impact was everywhere, in all these smart, systemic ways. I mean, how brilliant is this? Changing a misdemeanor sentence by a single day, from 365 to 364, to keep it from automatically triggering deportation for immigrants, or getting rid of college degree requirements for jobs that didn't really need them, opening up career paths. This is what happens when people start looking at the everyday work of government through a new lens.
But then, the ultimate test. In 2009, Mayor Nichols, the guy who started it all, who took all the heat, he lost his re-election. And the question on everyone's mind was, is that it? Was this just one mayor's pet project that's about to disappear? And the answer, incredibly, was no. The new mayor and the city council didn't just keep it going, they doubled down. They passed a formal resolution that turned the RSJI from a mayoral initiative into a permanent city mandate. It stopped being one person's project and became part of the city's DNA. It was officially institutionalized. That's how you make change last.
So as we wrap this up, what are the big lessons here? Seattle's journey gives us this incredible blueprint for any organization, not just a city, that wants to tackle this kind of systemic change.
And here they are, boiled down. 1, you absolutely need leadership that will not back down. 2, clean up your own mess before you start pointing fingers. 3, expect a fight. It's coming, and it's part of the process. 4, a huge early win is just getting people to talk about race without the world ending. And 5, you have to be patient. This is a marathon, not a sprint, but real transformative change is absolutely possible.
And I want to leave you with this last quote from a city employee who lived through this whole process, because it's so hopeful. After all that hard work, their conclusion wasn't, man, change is impossible. It was the opposite. It was, you know what? If you do it right, these giant institutions can change, and maybe a lot faster than we think.
And really, that's the question this whole case study leaves us with. Seattle gives us a roadmap. It shows that tackling these nervous areas is messy, it's uncomfortable, and it's totally necessary. The question for us now is, what can we learn from that roadmap for our own communities, our own workplaces, our own institutions?